Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm so pleased to have with us this week Paris Forrest from the Boeing Company. And I am so impressed by her presence on social media, also in person. I met her a number of years ago at the Diversity Best Practices Working Mother Conference, Multicultural Women's Conference, and we had such a good conversation, stayed connected. I follow her on LinkedIn, and I don't know what Paris posted the other day where I said, all right, let me reach out to her because I need to bring her on the podcast so we can talk about her career and how she's winning in 20-something years at the same company. Paris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Simone.
Absolutely. Well, let us get right in. You have been with the same company for over 20 years. What keeps you staying?
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I just crossed 22 years actually last week. And honestly, I can't say 22 years ago that my intention was to be here 22 years later, but the Boeing Company is a magnificent, magnificent company and firm. I've been well taken care of in this time. I've had a tremendous amount of opportunity. And honestly, what has kept me staying is I've been able to really stretch and challenge myself, not only as an individual contributor, but also as a leader. So I've had the opportunity to do a wide range of just incredibly difficult and challenging work, and that's what motivates me. So it's hard to find, that kind of challenge out there anywhere and by moving around. And, the longer that I've gotten in the tooth with the years, the better I've gotten at scaling quickly into some of these really hard statements of work. So it's been a really fun journey.
Wow, that's awesome. So did you have it together when you entered 22 years ago? And so were you immediately in the driver's seat and just knew where you wanted to navigate in the organization? Or take us back to the early days and what that was like for you.
Yeah, absolutely not. I was a hot mess. If there was like a dictionary, when you turn to the page, if it said hot mess, it would show me in like the first decade of my career. I absolutely did not have it all together. I mentor quite a few individuals, and what I tell, especially the generation that's about in the 3 to 5 year career window, is they are showing up so much more capable and ready for challenge than I was at that point in time. So it really did take me probably about that 7 to 10 years to really settle in and find my confidence. Our environment is extremely complex. And so if you don't come in really having a sense of self and what it is that you do well and giving yourself permission to, I would say, learn and fail, then it can take you a while to find your way. So I definitely was a late bloomer from a career perspective, but once I bloomed, I grew quickly. It really did come down to acknowledging that I needed help, that I couldn't navigate the environment on my own, and just keeping my head down and working hard was not going to get me ultimately where I wanted to go.
I'm going to jump right into asking for help. What advice can you give to my listeners about being comfortable with sort of showing your cards, if you will, and asking for help and not worrying about what it says about you in your career because you asked for help? Any tips there?
Yeah, I think it's about reframing the expectations of the environment around you. If you're in an environment where asking for help is a problem, then I think you have to ask yourself, am I in the right environment? I challenge myself all the time. If I am having a moment of vulnerability with my leader or with a mentor, and I can't be real and present and human in that moment, then for me, it's not the right environment. I'm not in the right place. I'm not talking to the right person because we are all human beings. If 2020 has taught us anything, we are in a machine with nothing but human beings being affected by everything around us. And some days that's awesome and it looks great. And some days it's not awesome and it looks terrible. And the only way to bridge that gap is to be able to ask for help. So I would encourage your listeners not to worry about what the outcome is going to be, but take the outcome as information and act accordingly.
Good advice. What are your thoughts on mentoring and sponsorships? I know most people get the concept of mentors, but I have learned over time and in my career that a sponsor is a key partner on your career journey. And so you've talked about moving up and up in the organization. Tell me how sponsors have factored into your career and what advice you can give around getting a sponsor on your team and working with a sponsor.
It's critical. So, and you really, there should be a strategic almost alignment that you have to the people in your network and what it is that you ultimately may be seeking in terms of their support. So I believe in your mentors, your advocates, and your sponsors. I think you need all three of them. Advocacy goes widely unrecognized as an important part of how you strategically position your network, especially in a really large firm. What most people take for granted is that quite a few of the decisions about opportunities that may be made available for you that you can't readily identify yourself, that all has to do with who's sponsoring you and who's advocating for you in the same room. If you have a leadership team that has 10 people on it and you have one sponsor, that's awesome, that's great. But if that one sponsor brings your name up and the other 9 people have no clue who you are, then your name comes up in conversation, but it doesn't go anywhere. So as you are navigating your professional networks, yes, you need to have the right mentors. Those are people that you may consider part of your personal board of directors. But you also need to be building relationships with other people who can advocate and support your sponsor as they go to really champion for you. So yes, it's one of those things that can take a little bit of, I would call it strategic energy, strategic mental energy to determine who's who in whatever the room is where decisions could be made about your career that you're not invited to.
Now, how did you learn about this concept? I know for me, I did not learn it in college, going
No.
into the workplace. It's sort of that unwritten rule, and you get lucky that you get tapped into, this is how the game is played. So
Yeah.
how did you come about this knowledge about strategically navigating your career?
Just like everybody else, I learned it the hard way. Um, it was definitely more so of I couldn't figure out why I felt stuck, why I felt stalled, what was happening. There was something that I could feel in the atmosphere that just made me feel very much like I was not achieving what was possible to be achieved, or I wasn't achieving at the rate of my peers. And honestly, a little bit of it was just a bit of dumb luck where I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, struck up a conversation with the right person who said, "You do know that the story on you is X." And I was like, "I'm sorry." When did that become the story on me? And so, it was a thing where, definitely no malicious intent, but people who at that point were responsible for speaking for me were speaking a bit of misinformation that just got flowed up, and it continued to become quite a bit of a narrative about what I was open to from my own career choices. So I would say never assume that someone's going to ask you, assume that they're going to ask the person closest to them that they trust. And so really knowing and navigating your political landscapes, I hear people tell me all the time, I don't do politics, I don't play politics. Well, the reality is you are either playing the game or the game is playing you. There is no in between. It is that black and white. And so you can not participate, but that doesn't mean that the game isn't actively happening.
I feel like I'm going to name your episode "Playing the Game" because you're definitely playing the game. It really makes sense. And I remember not playing the game from a networking standpoint because I thought I was taught heads down, do your work, get the results, you'll get the paycheck. And so there was an expectation, and that's not necessarily true with the heads down thing. You got to look up and you've got to engage and build those relationships.
Yeah, it's just like anything else. I consider that each one of us are our own enterprise. And if we think about the businesses out there that do well, they don't just keep their heads down and keep pumping out product. They set up billboards. They, spam us with every opportunity that they can to put the product in front of us. And not that we have to go to that intention or length, because that can obviously be debilitating from a reputation standpoint. But you also can't be silent. You can't say nothing and you can't do nothing. So I think, the negative connotation around playing the game that's been assigned is an unfortunate one, because especially for women and people of color, what it has done is put us in a box. It's compartmentalized us. And our peers are absolutely actively engaging in the game that they know exists. And that can sometimes be more of a driving force to some of the inequities that can feel very much like they're based on one thing, when really it's just based on the lack of being in the game. If you
Mm.
want to be in the game, you have to get in the game. You can't do that with your head down.
All right, get in the game.
Get
I'm
in the
noodling on
game.
the title, Get in the Game. I think it might be that. So tell us, Paris, then, what is your formula for successfully owning your career?
First things first is you will never get anyone else to believe anything about you that you won't believe about yourself. So it starts right in the mirror. Number one, own what it is that you do well and stand confidently in it. And as you start to do that, then it becomes very easy to articulate to your immediate people around you that are the decision makers what your preferences are from a career perspective. If you never tell someone what you want, they certainly won't guess. They're not going to read your mind, and they will most likely use your skills and talents to fulfill their needs and not your own. So it comes down to number one, being really clear with your own value proposition and the worth that you bring. Number two, being a-okay communicating that to the people in your immediate circle and communicating your needs, thoughts, desires around how you would like to use those skills and capability. And then ensuring that not just your immediate leadership chains or the people who are your immediate decision makers are aware, but others that are supporting those decision makers, or maybe peers or teammates to those decision makers. Because ultimately, there may be an opportunity that exists elsewhere that your name comes up for, because you've done enough in terms of communicating your own worth and value to the right network of people. So it's all about being intentional. If you actually want to be able to purchase the ticket on whatever it is, plane, spaceship, whatever it is, to go to a destination, then you have to do the work to do the search, right? And to be able to put in all of the criteria. If I want to go to Kansas City, I can't buy a plane ticket for LA, or I can't just say randomly select me a plane ticket and then get me to my location. I have to be intentional. So it's about owning your value, communicating that value, and being intentional about the direction.
Nice, nice. I'm loving that plain visual. Purchase the ticket. Yes, yes, awesome. So, what resources have helped you that you can share with others on, being tight with your career and getting to that destination?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the one that probably jumps to mind first is an amazing training that is led by Dr. Sharon Lamb Hartman and her company Inside Out Learning. And it's called the Authenticity Code. And what it does is it helps you unlock, based on a 12 personality trait framework, unlock what your strengths are to help you become what they call the executive you were born to be. I honestly had an executive title thrown at me in terms of what I was capable of being, but I couldn't necessarily see that myself and I couldn't digest it, especially thinking about what executive life looked like in my firm at the time. And so it was really great to be able to have a framework that I could say, you know what? This recipe of the 12 is really my authenticity code. And this is how I show up and how I want to show up. And I believe I can be an executive if I can be an executive with this level of authenticity. So I feel like that for me was a pivotal moment, because it went from being a concept to very tangible. I knew that when my opportunity presented itself, how I would step into that next level of leadership, that next level of organizational responsibility, because I had a great framework to work by. So I absolutely, it's one of the most amazing, amazing programs I've ever taken, great instrumentation. I still refer to a lot of material, which is why I will always say, you know, what have I used? It's not just a thing where I learned something in the moment. It has stayed with me through my executive life, which is going on almost 4 years now.
That's wonderful. We'll be sure to put that in the show notes, the authenticity code.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. We'll go ahead and add that in. So how do you deal with risk and taking risk, having an appreciation for risk in your career?
Yeah, you know, really, when it comes down to risk, you're either a person who's okay with having your parachute on, you're going to take that running jump and you're going to go ahead because you know the outcome is I'm going to pull this string. And either way, I'm okay with what the results are. I feel like you almost have to take that same kind of an approach from a career perspective. If everything you do is based on, am I ready now? Then likely you're going to be much more risk averse from a career perspective. Going into my first executive role, the first question I asked was, am I ready? And the answer was, well, of course you're not ready, because if you were ready, you'd already be doing it. This is about helping you to get ready. And you're capable of so much more than this next level, but this is a learning opportunity. So that's how I now assess assignments. It's not, is it scary? Is it complicated? Is it risky? Do I think I can? It's, does it give me an opportunity to stretch, to grow, to add a different layer of complexity to my capabilities? And so that really takes the risky or not risky, it kind of takes it out of it. And I am willing, right? I know that I have a parachute, I'm going to put it on, and now I'm just going to run and jump, and I'm going to pull this cord at the appropriate time, and something is going to happen, and I'm okay with either one of those outcomes.
I love that. I love these analogies. That I'm imagining you running and jumping and pulling the cord. Awesome, awesome. So you strike me as just being the visionary, and I love that we went back to the time, the early days in your career, and how you had to navigate to get to smoother sailing, if you will. So would you call that the time that your hands perhaps weren't on the driving wheel, or you weren't in the driver's seat?
Yeah, I wasn't even in the front of the vehicle. I definitely was in the back of whatever this vehicle was, just kind of going along with wherever the vehicle was going. And sometimes I let other people drive and other people navigate. And it was very much so a frustrating time for me, but I couldn't necessarily pinpoint why I was frustrated. I knew what was happening was not necessarily what I wanted, but I didn't really connect that that was because, number one, I wasn't driving, I wasn't navigating, nor was I communicating. I was sitting in the back of the vehicle while it was going where it was going, ill content with the direction that it was going, but also not doing anything about it.
Now, how were you able to pivot to move from the back seat to the front seat over to the driver's seat?
Sure, some of that was just time, experience, growth, and maturity. You know, when you're ready to get into the driver's seat, it's just like anything else in life. You make the active decision that now I'm not going to let X, Y, or Z control my fate or my destiny. So it was definitely organic as I began to grow in confidence. I grew in maturity, and I recognized that the worst thing that could happen in any situation is that somebody would say no. And I was okay with the answer being no. I was not okay with remaining silent. And that's really what I started to do in short order. And I had some great leaders that I could have real vulnerable conversations with and just express, whether it be my frustration or my confusion, things that I didn't understand. And really, it was about giving the level of trust that I ultimately would want for myself, giving that to my leaders, and then making my choices a result of how they either did or did not appreciate the trust that they were being given.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well said. So as we begin to wrap up the interview, the time that we're in, do you have any tips for navigating your career remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that it's so important that whatever type of presence you bring or comfort level that you bring, if you were sitting face to face with a person, you have to bring that up in these digital forms and mediums. Number one, that's just the way work is conducted. Even if we weren't in the type of environment that we're in now, most, if not all, companies are global in nature. So it's not likely that you're going to have all in person exchanges with people. So get comfortable feeling like even though you're not together, there's an environment of togetherness. making sure that you have the right kind of energy to really demonstrate your intention. I think people get nervous sometimes, and so then their energy changes and it flatlines, and it goes very, very even. So people cannot feel their humanity. This, if no time ever in life, this is the time for us to be able to demonstrate our humanity to other people. So as you are out there searching and looking, there is so much opportunity. It may not be where you thought it was going to be, but it is somewhere. So don't give up because what you thought was your field of opportunity is now barren or not available. Turn, shift your focus. There's so much opportunity out there. Go get it. And it will be there for those that go to capture it early. Don't be late.
I was going to ask you if you've had to pivot during this time. I know I certainly have had to pivot in 2020. What I started out with is not what's happening now, but it's good. You know,
Absolutely.
it really is good.
Absolutely. I can be very specific about that. I was working on a pretty high visibility transformation in my organization at the beginning of the year that just due to business conditions, they had to accelerate delivery on that transformation. And it was really, really hard. And I had a choice. I could either kind of leave myself in the doldrums over the fact that work that I really loved so much was now no longer there. Or I could say, okay, what opportunity just got created? And there was a specific opportunity I've been saying no to repeatedly, a lot. And I looked at it again and I was like, well, maybe my no is now a yes. Best decision I ever made, because not only was that opportunity one that created a brand new layer of visibility to the type of capability I bring, I also was able to connect it to another statement of work that nobody would have thought to connect it to and drive additional value. So when I say that pivot for me has been an exponentially return value on investment, unbelievable. And I think about how upset I was in January and how happy I am now in October. And it was all because of the shift in perspective.
I love that. Yeah, I agree with you. You know, these are the times for broadening our perspectives. As such an opportunity, remote or in person, which who knows when that will be. We have to learn to dance with the remote thing a lot more, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And ultimately, this is good training for us for what's to come in the future, because we don't control our tomorrows. We only control our todays. And so as the new challenges come, really being focused on not seeing it as a detriment or what's wrong, but saying, okay, that's a no, but that means that there could be 4 other yeses if I just turn and change my perspective.
Well said. Any additional parting words?
Get in the game. Don't wait. Don't delay. You don't have to have all of the answers. You don't have to have a perfect plan. You just have to take the first step. And it's okay to step in the wrong direction, because you always have the opportunity to turn around, to make a change. So don't delay. Get in the game.
Awesome. I love it. This has been a phenomenal interview, short and sweet and spicy. So much good stuff. I know my audience got a lot from it. So Paris, thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Simone. And I just want to encourage everyone out there that this is your time.
Awesome. Well, one last thing. Please tell our listeners, if they would like to stay connected with you, how they can do so.
Please find me on LinkedIn. It is my favorite social media platform. Please reach out, send me a message. I'm available for all types of different needs. Love to hear from you. Love to get feedback on the session as well.
All right. Awesome. Well, Paris, thank you so much for shining on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
And thank you for inviting all of us that have been on your podcast an opportunity and a platform. Appreciate you and the work you're doing.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.